Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. This is a special episode because we have someone on the Grow United team here. Many of you, if you've been following along or you have seen us in our Discord, you've probably seen Owen. You've seen him answering questions. You've seen him be a vital part of the movement of Grow, the growth of Grow. And today we wanted to bring him on, introduce him to the entire community, especially because he's going to be taking a bigger role in 2025 as a leader within our community, helping us take the mission to decentralize the global ag economy and nourish the world, and do that as best we can in 2025. So Owen, thank you for being here, man. We appreciate it. Give us a little bit of backstory on how you got here. We've seen you be around. We know you're in Royal now. We'll talk about that in a minute. But how'd you grow up and how'd you get in the farming space?
Yeah. First off, thanks for having me on here. I lived in Arizona when I was first born, and my grandpa has some pecan and pistachio farms down there. So I've always been around farming. And so like growing up, I worked on those for a while. And then a lot of my grandpa's brothers live up here in Royal. And so when I was about 14, we moved up to Royal my dad took a job up here working on the farm. So I started out just working with my dad, and it was in the cherry and apple orchards. That was when I was like 15 or something. And then kind of how I got started working with Austin, was he needed somebody to spray flies on the dairy. Flies and weeds were the two things he needed. And so he asked me if I wanted to do it, and I kind of hated working in the orchard. So I was like, sweet, let's do it. It sounds better than the orchard. So I went and did that, and he actually made me a little hoodie that said like assassin on it. So I felt kind of cool, but, so I went and did that. That was my sophomore year of high school. And then just every summer since then, I've worked on the dairy all throughout the summer. After I graduated, I kept working for Austin for a while, and then I went to college for animal and dairy science with the whole plan of coming back and, kind of help manage some things on the dairy and do some other things a little more advanced than what I was doing in high school. So that's kind of
wise.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I did.
In the last decade, you've moved up in the world.
A little bit, yeah, you could say that.
That's awesome. All right,
yeah.
So you came back to Royal, you started working with Austin. As you started to understand kind of what can happen from a decentralized community and blockchain, what were some of the moments for you where it clicked of, I want to be involved in what's going on here?
I think looking back, I think a big moment for me was like when COVID, all that stuff happened. I was 19 when COVID hit, and so I was just trying to figure things out, and then all of a sudden, everything was going crazy. And I remember, it's kind of stupid, but I remember in high school, me and my buddies, we would always go, like on the weekends, we'd go just to like McDonald's or something to get a snack or whatever and we'd try to eat, like for $5 because we had no money. And then after COVID, I remember like it was like double the price, everything was. And so that was like a big moment, like with blockchain and kind of the crypto side of things, that I was like, at that time I hadn't thought about it, but I was like, during COVID, they just printed like $4 trillion, and I'm working for like $15 an hour, and they can just print it whenever they want. So that was like a big thing for me. That was kind of weird to me, was like, why am I working so hard for this money when it's just created out of thin air? And then as far as the food side of things, I always tried to be kind of healthy, and, I like working out, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that clicked for me was when I first heard you give the grow bet. If you can tell me everything you've eaten in the past 72 hours.
Yeah, I'll tell it for anybody that hasn't got it. So if anybody can win this bet that listens to this episode, I'm going to change it a little bit because this is going to go out to a lot more than a live audience. But I've talked about Grow a lot of times over the last 2 years. I would say to over 10,000 people in person at this point, and I would always give the bet. Think about the last 72 hours and anything that you've eaten. So if you can think about that, I want you to hold it. I want you to raise your hand. And I said, all right, if you want me to send you a Bitcoin today, keep your hand raised. So right now, Bitcoin's trading somewhere around $98,000. So of course, everybody keeps their hand raised. And I say, okay, if you could tell me where that food came from, everything that went into growing it or raising it, and can prove it with the technology, today I'll send you that Bitcoin. So I've never lost that bet. But here's my bet to our listeners. If you can do that, I will send you Grow Rewards. So we're going to talk a little bit more for those of you listening to this that may not know what Grow Rewards are, but I will send Grow Rewards to anyone that can prove that over 72 hours that listens to this. And all you have to do is follow us and reach out to us on the Grow Renaissance podcast, and we'll get back to you. So that's the bet that Owen is talking about. So you heard the bet, and then what? And you
So I heard
lost
the bet.
in the bet either.
No, I definitely did not win the bet. And that was the problem because I'm surrounded by food. Like in Royal, you've been here, we produce a whole different amount of things and a lot of it. And so when I thought about it, I was like, I'm surrounded by food. A lot of my family owns it, so I could get it if I wanted it. And I can't even win the bet. So what is somebody that lives in the middle of Seattle? They have no chance, And so that was kind of when it clicked for me that this was a big issue, and it was something that blockchain could help solve and kind of bring to people that don't live in rural communities, but we can bring the rural community to them in a sense.
Yeah,
So that was a
I
big
like
kind
that.
of.
And it makes me think about why does that even matter? And when you talk about 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we knew what went into our food because we were either growing it, shooting it, hunting it, and eating it, or we were getting it from a very close neighbor. But you've heard this. Austin and I talk about this a lot, matching tradition with technology. And we're at a place in the world right now where global trade, the digital world, things are being shipped all over the world every day. That didn't exist then like it exists now, and it's not going away. And since some of the problems that have happened as well, you mentioned one earlier, what's actually happening in the supply chain and the production cycle of food that made that $5 meal at McDonald's go to $10 in a very short amount of time? Well, a lot of that was what was happening in the middle with factors that were caused by COVID, but really COVID didn't cause them. They just made them come out because of the factors of everything that happened in COVID. The other side is our health. Our health, and you look at chronic disease over the last 100 years, we're smarter, we have more technology, we have better quote unquote health systems than we've ever had, but our chronic diseases continue to rise. And I believe that's about what we eat and the way that we nourish ourselves and the way that we nourish the world. So it's really cool to start seeing it just sparked in me. We have this ability with the technology of today to take the really amazing traditions of the past, the things that are still happening in many of our farming, agriculture, and rural economies and communities, and showing that and connecting it to people that live in Seattle or LA,
Yeah.
Hong Kong, and making it all come together.
And I think a part of that, kind of with regenerative farming, a big thing about that is like the natural world can heal like itself. We just have to let it. And so kind of applying that into our healthcare system and why you were talking about all the chronic diseases and whatnot. It's not that, sorry, are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Keep going.
Okay. And so kind of with that regenerative farming, it's also the same with our health. Like not that a lot of the medicines and procedures we've developed are bad, but a lot of it just comes down to what we eat, like what we're putting into our body. And if we're putting natural, like healthy food, then our body will kind of heal itself, take care of itself a lot of times. And so that kind of goes along with a lot of what we do here on the farm as well. So
The systems of our bodies and the earth are much more intelligent than I think we may ever know, and for sure know now, and they will heal themselves. And it's our jobs as the stewards of to make sure that we do the best that we can.
yeah.
And we believe, I know you believe the same, Owen, you've been deeply involved in the Grow Renaissance mission and Grow United and what we're doing. As we go forward into 2025, we talk about the problems we're trying to solve. We know what we're trying to do. What are you the most excited about as we go into 2025?
I think I'm most excited about really just bringing this to more people, giving more people the chance to buy high quality food from people that they know and can trust, for their own health and benefit, and also for the benefit of the farmer to connect directly with their consumers. So I think just expanding it to more people can eat healthy, live better lives. I think that's what it's about. So that's what I'm excited about. So
I love it. And I think it's really cool for the listeners in our community to know you're on the ground floor. When we talk about being with producers, being consumers, you mentioned like your family has been working there for a long time. You own it, you work there, you live it, and you're doing it right now. Like right now, you're sitting in the lodge 10 minutes from, maybe about 20 minutes from Royal Dairy and all of that land, which has now being tracked, traced, put on a blockchain, and is on the path to decentralizing everything that we're doing. Just for our listeners, some things that Owen has been involved in is doing that same thing with honey, getting the bees tracked, traced, the hives, moving that into the blockchain, working with producers on all kinds of different fruit, including the honey, working with us closely on how do we expand the blockchain network. And so for the last, Owen, how long have you've been in this?
uh 9 months, probably 8 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we started the blockchain January 16th of 2024, which was just about 12 months ago. So Owen's been in for 9 months, has done a lot of work. Is for anybody that's ordered meat from Royal Ranch with their grow token on the Nourish Mart, Owen was probably the one that put it in a box and shipped it to you and put the stamp on there to make sure it got out.
Yep.
So he knows the process. He's been in the process. He's been doing it since he was 14 years old, then became the assassin of the weeds and the flies, and now he's moving up to doing it in the technology blockchain space and helping us lead the community. And so as we grow in 2025, one of the things that we want to do as we all go out to lead the vision that we have is open up our communication channels, have more voices, understanding on a daily basis what's happening within our community. And Owen's going to be a really, really big part of that, along with myself, along with all of the other voices that have been within our community. But we wanted to come on in a short episode, introduce him, let him tell you a little bit about his story and how he got here, so that when you see him in the Discord, in the communication channels, on the social media, you know who it is. You have a face to the name, the voice, and the writings behind the text, and you can know where it's coming from. So, Owen, thanks for being here, man. Thanks for everything that you are doing. I remember meeting with Owen about, now it was probably a year ago, and Austin and I came together. Most of you know our story, and we said, you may have the hardest job in the world because you got to know everything in my head, everything in Austin's head, bring it together and be able to communicate it and start working on all the different projects that we have. And he's done an amazing job on it. So we're excited for the future, and we will continue to communicate. So thank you, Owen. If you please like, share, subscribe to this episode, share it with as many people, follow us on our Grow Renaissance channels so that we can keep you updated, and we will have much more to come.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this episode. Remember, it will take a community of us to do the best in the world and truly nourish not only ourselves, but the planet, the atmosphere, the soil, the plants, and the animals on it. So make sure you spread this message anywhere that you can.